When I was a child, my school was a place of wonder and dread. Tucked between overgrown bushes and a crooked skeletal wood, its fiery red paint made it stand out like a warning. The teachers were eccentric, some kind, others fearsome, and the kids whispered stories of things best left unspoken. But nothing fascinated us more than the sealed building in the older kids' playground. A small red brick structure disconnected from the main school, its doors and windows had been walled up with stone and mortar. No one knew why it was abandoned, but rumors swirled. A lab accident, a ghostly headmaster, or worse. The truth, we were told, was simple. It was just an old toilet block, sealed to keep troublemakers out. But on the day I finally climbed its roof, I learned some doors are sealed for a reason. I was 8, terrified of heights and desperate to prove myself. While my classmates scaled the drainpipe with ease, I froze each time, earning their taunts. So one autumn evening, after the school emptied, I sneaked back alone. The playground was silent, the air thick with the scent of damp leaves. The building loomed ahead, its flat roof waiting. Gripping the rusted drainpipe, I climbed. My hands shook, my stomach lurched, but this time I didn't stop. When my fingers touched the roof's edge, triumph surged through me. I'd done it. Then I saw the hole, a small jagged opening in the center of the roof. Kneeling, I peered inside and recoiled. The room below was perfectly preserved, white tiles, sinks, 3 stalls with dark brown doors. A layer of stagnant water shimmered on the floor. And then, the smell hit me. Cigarette smoke, thick, suffocating. I spun, expecting a teacher nearby, but the playground was empty. Then, from inside the sealed building, a choked gasp, and the farthest stall door creaked open. The smoke clung to my throat like a living thing. I tried to cough quietly, pressing my face against the cold rooftop to muffle the sound. My eyes watered as I stared down into that impossible hole. The cubicle door stood halfway open now, revealing only darkness inside. Then, a wet, rattling breath, not from the stall, from everywhere. The sound seemed to ooze from the walls, the stagnant water, the cracked tiles. My fingers dug into the rough concrete of the roof as my heartbeat pounded in my ears. There's no way in, no way out. The building's sealed. A drop of water fell from the hole and landed in the room below with a soft plink. Then another, and another. Except it wasn't raining. The drops were dark, thick, blood. I jerked back from the edge, scrambling on my hands and knees toward the drainpipe. The smell of smoke was overwhelming now, mixed with something metallic, something rotten. A low, gurgling whisper rose from below. Help! Me! I didn't wait. I couldn't. My foot slipped as I grabbed the drainpipe, my sneaker scraping against the brick. For one heart-stopping second, I dangled, the ground far below me. Then I caught hold again, shimmying down like my life depended on it. Because it did. The moment my feet hit the pavement, I ran. Not toward the school gates, they were locked at this hour, but to the old brown gate at the back of the playground, the one the teachers never used, the one we used to sneak in on weekends. It rattled as I climbed, the rusted metal groaning under my weight. I didn't care. I hurled myself over the top, tumbling into the overgrown bushes on the other side. Thorns scratched my arms, but I barely felt them. I just ran, my breath coming in ragged gasps, until I burst out onto the empty street. I didn't stop until I reached my house. That night, I dreamed of the hole. In the dream, I was back on the roof, peering down. The room below wasn't empty anymore. The water on the floor was red. And something was knocking from inside the stall. Not a fist. A head. Over and over, thud, 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 like it was trying to break through the door. I woke up screaming. The next morning, I told my best friend, Danny. He laughed. Smoke coming from a sealed room. You're full of it, mate, he said, kicking a soccer ball against the school wall. Probably just some hobo camping out in there. But the doors are bricked up. Danny shrugged. Then you imagined it. I hadn't imagined it. But by lunchtime, the whole school knew. Some kids believed me. Most didn't. A few older boys even dared each other to go up and look, until Mr. Keenan, the janitor, caught them and dragged them to the headmaster's office. That should have been the end of it. But after school, as I walked past the sealed building, I saw something that made my blood freeze. Fresh cigarette butts, scattered on the ground beneath the drainpipe, like someone had been standing there, watching, waiting. The cigarette butts shouldn't have been there. I knelt down, my fingers hovering over the crushed filters. They looked fresh, the paper still slightly damp from morning dew. My throat tightened as I noticed something else, faint footprints in the mud beneath the drainpipe, too small to be an adult's. Looking for ghosts? I jumped. Danny stood behind me, grinning, his backpack slung over one shoulder. There was someone here, I said, pointing. Last night, after I climbed down. Danny's smile faltered. He crouched beside me, examining the evidence. For once, he didn't call me a liar. Maybe it's the caretaker, he offered weakly. Mr. Keenan didn't smoke. We all knew that. A shadow fell over us. What are you two doing? Mr. Keenan himself stood there, his wiry frame blocking the sun. His usual scowl deepened as his eyes flicked from us to the cigarette butts. Something unreadable passed over his face. Nothing, sir, Danny said quickly. Just dropped my pen. The janitor's jaw clenched. He scooped up the butts in one gnarled hand. This area's off limits, you know that. But why? I blurted. His fingers tightened around the crushed filters. For a second I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, asbestos. The word came out sharp, practiced. Old building materials, dangerous to breathe. He pocketed the butts. Now scram before I report you. We scrambled. The library smelled like dust and old paper. After school, while Danny kept watch, I combed through yearbooks and newspaper archives. If a girl really died in that building, there had to be a record. Then I found it. May 12, 1983, a tiny obituary buried between bake sales and football scores. Local girl, 12, passes suddenly, school mourns tragic loss. No name, no cause of death. Just a generic photo of our school with the caption, "Headmaster urges privacy for grieving family." I flipped through more pages. Nothing. Then, a rustle behind me. The librarian, Mrs. Greer, stood uncomfortably close, her glasses glinting. Research project? Yes, school history. Her lips pursed. She reached past me and snapped the yearbook shut. Some histories are better left alone. Before I could respond, she walked away, her shoes clicking ominously, but not before I saw it. Her hands were shaking. Danny didn't meet me the next morning. His mum called mine, saying he'd come down with a fever. Strange, she muttered. He was fine last night. At school, whispers followed me. Did you hear? Danny Carlisle saw something last night. His mum said he woke up screaming about a girl with black eyes. Said she was dripping. I ran to the toilets and threw up. That afternoon, I found the note in my locker, a single scrap of paper folded crookedly. The handwriting was messy, urgent. Meet me at the back gate. 4 p.m. I know what you saw. K. Mr. Keenan. At 3:59, I stood at the rusty gate, my heart hammering. The janitor emerged from the bushes, his face grim. He didn't speak, just pressed something into my palm and walked away. I looked down. A black and white photo. 3 girls in old-fashioned uniforms, arms linked, smiling. One had been circled in red ink. Her eyes were dark, her smile was wrong, and scrawled on the back in shaky capitals, "She didn't die alone." The photo burned in my pocket all night. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, seeing those 3 smiling faces every time I blinked. The circled girl's grin stretched too wide, her eyes hollow like someone had scratched the negative. At dawn, I made my decision. The address on the back led me to a rotting house on the edge of town, peeling paint, a garden choked with weeds, the kind of place parents warn you about. I knocked 3 times before the door creaked open. A woman in her 40s peered out, her greying hair pulled into a tight bun. Deep shadows circled her eyes. "Mrs. Collins?" I asked, recognizing the lollipop lady from my first year at school, though she looked 20 years older now. Her grip on the door tightened. "You shouldn't be here." I found a photo. I pulled it out, my hands shaking. Mr. Keenan gave it to me. Her breath hitched. For a moment I thought she'd slammed the door. Then, "Come in, quickly." The house smelled like mothballs and burnt toast. Mrs. Collins didn't offer tea, just sat me at a sticky kitchen table and stared at the photo like it might bite her. "That's me," she said finally, tapping the smallest of the three girls. Sarah Miller's the one circled, and that, her finger hovered over the third girl, whose face was half turned away. "That's Helen." My throat went dry. "They died in the toilets." A bitter laugh. "Sarah did. Helen disappeared the next day." The clock on the wall ticked loudly. "Tell me," I whispered. "May 11th, 1983. Three girls skipped class. Sarah had stolen cigarettes from her stepdad. They hid in the girls' toilets, giggling, passing a single smoke between them. Then Sarah started coughing. At first we thought she was joking. Mrs. Collins, little Maggie back then, said, her voice hollow, she always did this. Fake choking to scare us. But Sarah collapsed. Foam bubbled on her lips. Her eyes rolled back. Helen screamed, said we'd get expelled or worse. Maggie wanted to run for help. Helen had another idea. She dragged Sarah into the last stall. Said if we left her there, no one would know we'd been smoking. Said Sarah would wake up and sneak home like nothing happened. They wiped their fingerprints off the door. They flushed the cigarette butts. They left her there. But that's not the worst part, Mrs. Collins whispered. She opened a drawer and slid a yellowed newspaper clipping toward me. Local girl missing. Police baffled. Helen Vance, 12, vanished the next night. Her parents swore they heard her whispering to someone in her room before bed. When they checked, her window was open. Her bed was soaked with stagnant water. Mrs. Collins' hands trembled. They found her inside the sealed building a week later, even though it was already bricked up. My stomach turned. How? She leaned closer. Sarah let her in. The walk home felt endless. Every shadow seemed to ripple. Every puddle reflected too many faces. I was 2 streets from my house when I saw it. A figure by the bus stop. Too tall. Too thin. Dripping. I ran. Danny was waiting on my doorstep. His face was pale, his eyes bloodshot. Before I could speak, he grabbed my arm. "I saw her last night," he rasped. "She asked me if I wanted a smoke." Then he rolled up his sleeve. 3 scratches ran down his forearm, fresh, deep, like something had dragged its nails through flesh. The police found Danny at sunrise. He was kneeling in the older kids' playground, his pajamas soaked through, fingers clawed bloody against the sealed building's bricks. When they pulled him away, his whisper made the officers freeze. "She's almost through." I visited him at the psychiatric ward that afternoon. Danny sat curled on a plastic chair, staring at a water stain on the ceiling. The scratches on his arm had turned an angry red. The skin around them puckered like something had burrowed underneath. His eyes flicked to me. "You brought her with you." The air conditioning kicked on, carrying a whiff of stale smoke. I swallowed hard. "Who?" Danny's cracked lips parted. "Sarah, and the thing that follows her." Then he began to scream. Mr. Keenan was waiting by my bike after visiting hours. The janitor's face was grey with exhaustion. A fresh set of scratches ran down his neck. "We need to talk," he muttered, shoving a rusted key into my hand. Midnight, boiler room door. The key burned in my palm. Why? His breath smelled like whiskey and fear. Because the salt isn't working anymore. The school at midnight was a tomb. Moonlight bled through the high windows as I crept down the basement stairs. The boiler room door stood slightly ajar, revealing Mr. Keenan hunched over a work table littered with bizarre items. A jar of blackened teeth. A police report dated 1983 with voided stamped in red. A Zippo lighter crusted with green mold and a shovel. Fresh dirt clung to its blade. Mr. Keenan didn't look up. They buried Helen Vance in the woods across from the school. I froze. What? Not all of her came back. He flipped open the police report to a censored photo. A girl's torso found in the sealed building, still breathing after 7 days without food or water. The rest is still out there, growing. A pipe groaned overhead. Dripping echoed through the vents. Mr. Keenan grabbed my shoulder. Sarah didn't just die in that stall. Something watched her die. And now it wants out. We emerged into the playground at 1:17 a.m. The crack in the sealed building's wall had widened overnight. Now it stretched from the drainpipe to the roof like a jagged lightning bolt, and it was breathing. Faint wisps of smoke curled from the fracture. The bricks pulsed outward slightly with each exhalation, mortar dust sifting down like snow. Mr. Keenan unscrewed a thermos. Not coffee, but holy water stolen from St. Mary's. He hurled it at the crack. The liquid hit the bricks and sizzled like acid. Something screeched from inside the building, a sound that vibrated my teeth. The ground trembled as the crack split wider, revealing a sliver of darkness beyond. Then we saw it. An eye, pressing against the gap. Not human, pupil slit like a cat's, iris the color of stagnant water. Mr. Keenan crossed himself. Helen's still in there, and she's been changing. The streetlights blew out as we ran. Behind us, the sealed building emitted a wet crunch, bricks grinding against each other. I didn't look back, not even when the laughter started, high, girlish. And coming from inside the drainpipe we'd climbed so many times. My bedroom window was open when I got home. On the pillow, 3 cigarette butts, arranged in a smile. The cigarette butts were still warm. I stared at the twisted grin on my pillow, the paper filters damp with something thicker than saliva. My hands shook as I scooped them into an empty jam jar, the closest thing I had to a salt-lined prison. The moment the lid sealed, the glass fogged from the inside. 3 words formed in the condensation: "Let me in." Danny was gone by morning. The hospital staff swore he'd been sedated, strapped down, under constant watch. Yet at 3:33 a.m., every camera on the pediatric ward flickered. For 17 seconds of static, the nurses reported hearing giggling. When the feed restored, the bed held only 2 things: a puddle of black water soaking through the sheets, a single brick from the sealed building placed neatly on the pillow, still dripping. Mrs. Collins answered her door with a shotgun. The lollipop lady's once neat bun had frayed into wild grey strands. She reeked of tobacco and sweat, her living room now a war room, newspaper clippings and faded photos pinned to every wall with red yarn. "You shouldn't have come back," she hissed, peering through curtains at the empty street. "She knows you're helping him." Helping who? The gun barrel tilted toward my chest. The janitor, the coward who buried my friends. A floorboard creaked upstairs. Mrs. Collins didn't blink. "That's just Helen. She gets restless before rain." The truth came out between swigs of medicinal whiskey. May 1983 wasn't the first tragedy at our school. "There's always been a presence in those woods," Mrs. Collins whispered, tracing a yellowed photo of the original 1923 schoolhouse. Old miners' tales called it the drip man, something that lived in the pits and liked taking children. She slid a brittle newspaper across the coffee table. "Local boy vanishes. Search party finds only shoes. 1951. The accompanying photo showed a pair of Oxfords filled to the brim with black water. "It got stronger when they built the toilets over the old well," she said. "Sarah was just the first it properly took, the first it wore." Upstairs, something heavy dragged itself across the ceiling. Mrs. Collins poured another drink. Keenan and the headmaster knew. That's why they bricked it up with salt and silver. Why they lied about asbestos. Her eyes met mine. Why they let Helen disappear. The playground was empty when I returned. Moonlight painted the sealed building in corpse-grey tones. The crack had widened further, now a jagged mouth big enough to slip a hand through. I approached slowly, the jar of cigarette butts burning in my pocket. Then I heard it, breathing. Not from the crack, from the drainpipe. Wet, ragged inhales echoed inside the rusted metal. Something was climbing up from below. I ran just as a pale hand slithered from the pipe's opening, fingers glistening with algae. My house was violated. Dad's toolbox lay scattered across the garage, every sharp object arranged in a spiral leading to my bedroom door. Mum's prized china cabinet stood empty, the plates stacked neatly on my bed. And on my desk, a freshly lit cigarette balanced on the edge of an ashtray. Still burning, waiting. The call came at dawn. Mr. Keenan's voice was barely human, a wheezing rasp. "It's got Danny, it's teaching him." A wet crunch echoed down the line like someone chewing raw meat. "Meet me at the back gate. Bring salt. Bring silver." Then the one sentence that turned my blood to ice, "And don't look at his face when we find him." The back gate stood ajar when I arrived, its rusted hinges weeping red streaks down the wood. Mr. Keenan waited in the pre-dawn gloom, his work boots sinking into mud that looked too black, too thick, like the stagnant water from the sealed building. In his shaking hands, a hacksaw, a glass jar full of teeth, and Danny's school ID card crusted with something greenish. "It's been molding him." The word slithered out between the janitor's nicotine-stained teeth. He wouldn't meet my eyes. A twig snapped in the woods beyond the fence. Then another. Something was coming. We found Danny by the old well. Or what used to be Danny. He knelt in a circle of dead leaves, his hospital gown stiff with dried fluids. His head lolled at an unnatural angle, vertebrae pressing against skin like knuckles under a glove. And his mouth, stretched too wide, packed with wet cigarette butts. "She's teaching me," Danny rasped. The voice wasn't his. Something deeper vibrated beneath it, a sound like water choking a drain. Mr. Keenan grabbed my arm. "Don't look at his—" Too late. Danny turned. Where his eyes should have been, two fat droplets of black water bulged, trembling at the rims, ready to spill. The janitor acted first. He hurled the jar of teeth at Danny's chest. The glass shattered, and for one heartbeat, the thing wearing my friend shrieked, a sound that shook birds from the trees. Then the woods exploded with movement. Branches lashed like arms. The well belched a plume of fog that stank of rotten tobacco. And from every shadow, whispers converged. "Join us! Join us! Join us!" Mr. Keenan shoved the hacksaw into my hands. "The bones!" he screamed over the rising wind. "Under the building! Cut them free!" Then Danny was on him. "Before we move on, please donate me in the form of subscribe." I ran as teeth met flesh. The screams followed me all the way to the sealed building. The crack had become a gaping maw, wide enough to crawl through. Inside, the darkness breathed, exhaling gusts of freezer-cold air. Something glittered in the dirt below the fracture. I knelt, brushing away debris, a child's ribcage. Dozens more surrounded it, half buried in the foundation, each one wired together with rusted metal. The real salt barrier, not in the walls, in the bones. The hacksaw screamed against the first rib. The moment the bone snapped, the ground heaved. The crack in the wall split wider with a sound like a dying man's last gasp. From inside the building, a wet clapping echoed, slow, mocking applause. Then the whispers came again, this time from inside my head. "Clever boy. But she's already out." I turned. Mrs. Collins stood at the playground gate, her shotgun dangled from one hand, her neck bent at the same unnatural angle as Danny's, and from her smiling lips a single cigarette smoldered. The first shot took off my left earlobe. I barely felt it. The second shattered the hacksaw in my grip. Mrs. Collins, no, not her anymore, advanced with jerky steps, her knees popping with each movement. The thing inside her cocked its head, studying me with eyes that now mirrored Danny's. Liquid. Black, spilling over. As the possessed lollipop lady raised the shotgun for a killing blow, the sealed building shuddered behind me. Bricks rained down, and from the newly opened darkness, a small pale hand emerged. Helen's hand, reaching for me. The last thing I saw before fleeing, Mrs. Collins turning the gun on herself, her mouth stretching wider, wider. Until the barrel fit inside, the gunshot echoed through the empty playground long after I stopped running. I didn't look back, didn't dare. The wet crunch of Mrs. Collins's skull hitting the pavement chased me all the way home, mingling with the whispers that now slithered through my thoughts like smoke. "You should have looked away. You should have let her teach you. Now you'll learn the hard way." My parents weren't home. The kitchen table bore signs of a hasty exit. Half-eaten toast, coffee still steaming. A single cigarette rested on my father's plate, the filter stained with something dark. Upstairs, my bedroom door stood ajar. Inside, the walls wept. Thin trails of black moisture streaked the wallpaper, converging above my bed where 3 words gleamed in the damp. "The well remembers." The library archives reeked of mildew and old fear. I bypassed the school records entirely, heading straight for the town's founding documents. The 1892 mining accident reports were filed under industrial mishaps, their pages brittle as dead skin. The black and white photos stopped my breath. Men in coveralls standing around a gaping pit, a rope disappearing into darkness, and at the bottom of the page, a handwritten note. Recovered 12 bodies. 13th man unaccounted for. Note, liquid in lungs suggests drowning, though pit was dry. Recommend sealing. But it was the next document that made my hands shake. A land survey from 1921. When they built the school, someone had circled the proposed toilet block's location with red ink and scribbled, "Abandoned well here, do not disturb." Mr. Keenan found me there at sunset. The janitor looked decades older, one arm wrapped in bloody bandages. He didn't speak, just dropped a rusted key on the table, the twin to the one he'd given me before. "It's in the well," he rasped. "Always has been." I stared at the key. "What is?" His good hand trembled as he lit a cigarette. The smoke curled unnaturally, forming shapes in the air. A girl's face, a gaping mouth, a dozen grasping hands. "Hunger," he said. Then the lights went out. The woods were alive. Every shadow twisted as we approached the well. The ground squelched underfoot, the mud too warm, too pulsing. Mr. Keenan gripped my shoulder. "They used the miners first, then the children. Now it's got Danny, got Maggie." His breath hitched. "Soon it'll want new teachers." The well's stone rim glistened under our flashlights. Something had scratched fresh marks into the ancient rock. Crude stick figures of a tall shape holding smaller ones by the hand. Then we saw the rope, a frayed length of it tied to the well's crossbeam, still swaying, as if someone had just climbed down. The first cigarette hit my cheek, then another, and another. They rained from the trees like malignant hail, hundreds of them, filters glowing ember red in the dark. Mr. Keenan swore, batting them away. "Not tobacco," he choked. "Never was." I caught one mid-air. The paper peeled away in my fingers, revealing what lay inside. A child's finger bone. Hollowed out, filled with black fluid. The well gurgled. A wet, hungry sound echoed up from the depths. The rope jerked taut. Mr. Keenan backed away, face ashen. "It's waking up." Then the whispers came, not from the woods, not from my head, but from below our feet. "Come see. Come learn. Come teach." We ran as the first hand emerged, pale, small, dripping, gripping the well's edge, then another, and another, until the stone rim was crawling with them. My house was dark when I returned, except for one light. My bedroom window glowed amber, the silhouette inside unmistakable, a girl, waiting, smoking, and beside her a taller shadow, arms outstretched in welcome. The silhouette in my window wasn't alone. As I crept up the driveway, the amber light revealed 3 figures now. The girl's hunched form, the tall shadow with outstretched arms, and between them a smaller, familiar shape. Danny. His head lolled at that unnatural angle, black droplets glistening on his chin. The back door creaked open before I touched it. A trail of wet footprints led inside. The kitchen smelled of burnt hair and old cigarettes. Mom's good silverware lay arranged in a spiral on the linoleum, each piece impaling a crumpled cigarette filter. At the spiral's center sat Dad's hammer, its head dark with dried fluid. The whispering started as I reached the stairs. "You were always the clever one. That's why she wants you. To teach the new children." Each step groaned underfoot. The temperature dropped with every riser, my breath fogging by the time I reached the landing. My bedroom door stood slightly ajar. Through the crack, I saw movement. Something brushing back and forth, like a teacher writing on a blackboard. The moment I pushed the door open, the smell hit me. Stagnant water, mouldering tobacco, and beneath it all, the coppery tang of the well. Danny sat cross-legged on my bed, his hollow eyes tracking me, his mouth stretched in a grin too wide for his face, lips cracking at the corners. Black fluid oozed between his teeth as he spoke. "She says hello." The other figures stood with their backs to me. The girl in a dripping school uniform, the tall shape in tattered miner's coveralls. Their shoulders shook in silent laughter. Then the miner turned. And I understood why Mr. Keenan had warned me about faces. Where his features should have been, the miner's skin stretched smooth and blank. No eyes, no mouth, just two nostrils flaring above a chin that dripped black sludge onto the carpet. The girl kept writing on my bedroom wall with one skeletal finger, the plaster sizzling where she touched it. The same three words repeated over and over: the well remembers. The well remembers. The well remembers. Danny giggled, a wet, choking sound. She's almost finished the new school. The miner reached into his overalls and produced a rusty Zippo, the same one Mr. Keenan had shown me in the boiler room. He flicked it open. Inside, instead of a flame, a tiny human tooth glowed blue. I ran as the first wall caught fire. Not normal fire. This burned cold, the flames licking up the wallpaper in shimmering black waves. The girl's writing glowed neon where it burned, the words searing themselves into my vision even after I looked away. Danny's laughter followed me downstairs. You can't outrun the lesson. The front door slammed shut before I reached it. The kitchen silverware rattled in its spiral. And from the basement, a new sound emerged, splashing. Something rising through the sump pump. I escaped through the bathroom window. The night air should have felt clean. Instead, it reeked of the well. Halfway down the street, I risked a glance back. All three figures stood at my bedroom window now. Danny waved, the girl blew a smoke ring, and the faceless miner held up the glowing Zippo, illuminating the fourth silhouette that had joined them. Mom's familiar outline, her head tilting at that same unnatural angle. Mr. Keenan's tool shed stank of blood and bourbon. The janitor sat amid piles of salt bags, his bandages soaked through. He didn't look up as I crashed inside. It's in the houses now, I gasped. He nodded toward the workbench. Then it's time. Among the scattered tools lay our only hope, a 1923 blueprint of the school's plumbing. A mason jar labeled 13th Man, pit sample. Full of black fluid and Dad's gasoline can from the garage, Mr. Keenan finally met my eyes. The salt was never to keep it in. He tapped the blueprint where the toilet block connected to the old well. It was to keep it fed. We approached the school at 3:33 a.m. The sealed building's crack had become a doorway. Through it, I glimpsed movement, small shapes darting between the stalls. Laughing, learning. Mr. Keenan unscrewed the gasoline can. They used the children to bait it. Keep it docile, his hands shook, but it's grown too hungry now. As we stepped forward, the ground quivered beneath us. From inside the building, a familiar voice called, "Welcome to the new school." Danny stood in the doorway. His smile stretched ear to ear. And behind him, the faceless miner raised a dripping hand in greeting. The gasoline sloshed in the can as we approached the crumbling building. Danny's grin widened with each step we took, his jaw unhinging slightly too far, black droplets spattering his hospital gown. "She's been waiting for you," he gurgled. Mr. Keenan's grip tightened on the lighter. The salt wasn't keeping it contained, it was seasoning. I froze. What? The janitor's eyes never left Danny's dripping form. They weren't trapping it in the well, they were feeding it, little bits at a time, just enough to keep it docile. He nodded to the jar of black fluid. "That's not water, that's digested salt." Behind Danny, the toilet stalls stood open. Each one occupied. Small, hunched shapes sat on the toilets, their features indistinct in the gloom. The reek of stagnant water and old tobacco rolled out in waves. One stall remained empty, the last one on the left. Sarah's stall. The miner stepped from the shadows. Up close, I saw the truth. His coveralls weren't tattered. They'd been chewed. Ragged holes showed where something had gnawed at the fabric.